Welcome back to 1023 Culture. Today I have an old friend of mine, Sam, who I've known Sam for, let me see here, 15 years? Well, longer.
23.
23, yeah. So I've known him since he was in high school.
Back when you had brown hair.
Back when I had brown hair and there was no gray on me at all. So, anyway, I don't want to think that far back. What are you doing to me here? So,
you're the one who said, let me interview.
Oh, jeez.
I'm just going along for the ride.
Yeah. Is this a good idea or not? Let's find out. So, Sam, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Tell us in a nutshell who you are, what you do, what your basic, if somebody met you at a party, what would they expect to hear about you?
First off, I am the very model of a modern major general. I have the information as vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England, and I quote the Vice historical, from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical. I am acquainted too with matters mathematical. I understand equations both the simple and quadratical. Binomial theorem, I'm teeming with a lot of news, with many cheerful facts about the square of the hypotenuse.
So we'll be cutting that out. Okay, I'm just kidding. So as you can see,
resist a little bit of humor.
Yep. Sam's a proper nerd. So
I have many interests in many varied areas. Currently, I'm a social worker.
What do you do as a social worker? Let's zero in on a subject here. Right. You're currently a social worker. Do you work for a private or public entity?
I work for a public nonprofit. I work in a veterans program. We assist veterans getting housing and maintaining their housing.
Okay.
I've worked in other varied parts of that program and that company, but currently I'm with the veterans.
Okay. So If you've got more, say it. If you got more, keep going.
I was going to move on to the next thing I was going to say about me.
Okay. Next thing you're going to say about you.
I used to be a handyman. That was my trade for a number of years, and it was a good trade, but it defeated my body pretty decently, and I'm happy to be currently in more of a desk job.
Yeah. So you're saving your body a bit because you're in your 30s now. And
late 30s.
Yeah. It blows me away.
36 and a half.
36 and a half. You're like a 2-year-old. I'm 2 and a half. So
it's how I stay young.
Yes. So we, so as a person, you should have some story. I mean, some stories, of course, about being a handyman. I mean, I've seen some of the stuff you've done. But I mean, let's talk a little bit more about. I mean, something people might be interested in. What is some of the things you encounter as a social worker for veterans for helping them stay housed? I mean, what do you encounter? What are some of the challenges? I mean, I'm just gonna throw some ideas out here. What are some of the good things that have happened? Things that have opened your eyes a little bit, maybe?
Right now, the biggest challenge is there is a very noticeable lack of housing. So if you come across a homeless veteran that's looking for housing, helping them is just the biggest challenge because there's just no resources. We can do a deposit. We can help them pay for several months of their rent. But when there's nowhere to go, when the federal limits say, for VASH, which is Veteran Assisted Housing, Veteran Assisted Supportive Housing, whatever it is, it's like a Section 8 for veterans. They say their limit is X, and the lowest amount they're finding to rent is X times 2. You're not really able to help them much. I mean, you can get them into that place, but 6 to 9 months down the road, they're going to be you're doing it again. My rent now.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a challenge.
And once they've been on the program and used 6 to 9 months of their subsidy, they're off for 2 years.
Oh,
So,
jeez.
you're not only looking at you're trying to find them housing, but you got to be responsible about the housing you find them. If I put a single veteran in a house and it's $2,000 a month and he's getting $950 at the end of that time, that 6 to 9 months, he's not going to be able to have a house. He's going to have to be delinquent on his rent and then get evicted, and so that's just irresponsible there. I mean, we do what we can to help, but sometimes it's better not to help because you're just giving them 6 months out of their situation and they have to go right back to it, which would just be defeating.
Okay. Yeah, that is pretty tough. So when you're working with them, are you also working on employment things and stuff like that? It's like, okay, you get this much assistance under disability as a veteran, and listen, what can we do to get you working so that is that one part of your job?
And there is definitely that element, helping them get, whether we're going to get them service connected so they can get more disability. If they got a disability while they were in the services, whether we're going to help them get housed, whether we're helping them get employed. There's very varied aspects, but again, that $2,000, it isn't maintainable for me, and I'm making almost $20 an hour. I can't imagine telling somebody, you just, you're coming off the street and you have to survive on, whatever's left over after you spend $2,000 just on rent.
That's more than my mortgage. And I'm not sure how people do it these days. Yeah,
I'm flabbergasted. If my rent wasn't as where it was, I'd be really sinking.
Yeah, it's tough out there. So when you're when so somebody comes in and to talk to you and says, "Hey, I need help," or do you go out and find them? How does it work?
There's a couple of ways we get people. The majority of people come through the system at the office, and they call up there or they go to the website and they're looking for services, and it says, "Oh, you're a veteran?" Point you directly to me.
Okay.
Thank you, website. Sometimes I'm not the best person to help, but because they're a veteran, I automatically get the service first.
Right.
And then there's also a couple other things like the Northwest VETS Resource Center, which is over in Port Angeles, and they will refer people to us, as well as a program called Vet Connect, which that's closer to Port Townsend, and that will refer people to us. And then there's other various means of reference, but they, we have something called a stand down in different cities every so often. And a stand down is where veterans come to get assistance and services and all sorts of needs met that they have. Some of them only come in for the stand downs because they don't want to work with the services. But sometimes you get someone coming in there and they do want assistance and they didn't know how to get it, and we're able to cultivate that relationship, and then we bring them in for a full service and get them all set up with whatever.
Okay. So do you work with other agencies? I mean, like when I was a deacon, an active deacon in my church and on the deacons board, we get referrals from other places, and people would get referred into us, and then we'd also work with some of those other agencies as well. Do you find yourself doing that a lot? Yeah.
There's a lot of interagency cooperation. We work with HUD. We work with the VASH program. We work with WorkSource, like I said, Vet Connect and Northwest Veterans Resources. I mean, there's just a ton of interagency communication and sharing of how to assist clients.
Okay. So they come in and they talk and they talk to you, and you kind of evaluate where they're at and what their needs are. Are you homeless currently? Are you about to become homeless? because one of the programs I worked with was a place called Vine Maple Place. Great place to send your money if you want to, donate something. Let me know. Because they worked with housing single parents, keeping single parents housed.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they discovered in that process was they are they found it way easier to catch them before they become homeless and keep them in a house, as opposed in a place, as opposed to helping them once. I mean, they did both. They didn't, but do you find the same kind of thing?
You just made me laugh. Absolutely. It is from the experience that I've had in the last few years. It is so much better to help somebody before they get to the point of homelessness. However, the grant that I currently work under actually prefers us to house homeless people than to assist the people that are already housed. I mean, there is assistance for them, but they would rather us get people off the streets. And I'm like, but if we could just devote so many more funds to assisting people who are already housed, we could keep the numbers of people going onto the streets from increasing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't seem to be currently where the
and who would the viewers who would they reach out to help push that direction better, so that it would be a two-pronged attack kind of concept of I'm fighting homelessness by helping the homeless and helping people just before they become homeless. So who would they reach out to? We're talking Congress people? Were we talking the Veterans Administration?
The VA program that I work under is federally funded, so it would definitely be federal Congress, federal people.
Okay.
But, I'm going to say, and the more I've been around and learned this stuff, it starts at home. Yeah. It absolutely starts at home. If you elect a leader for your community, a mayor, whatever for your community that has a housing first attitude, that's what you're going to see in your community. And that's what's going to get broadcast further up the chain. I mean, it's a trickle up thing, and it really does trickle up.
So it's a grassroots up is what we're talking here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just recently...
This guy didn't think he had anything to talk about. He was worried about this. Can you hear this? Okay.
No, it's actually that I had too many things to talk about. I actually started this book recently. It's going to be controversial. I don't care. It's called San Francisco. The reason why... San Francisco, why progressives ruin cities.
Yeah.
And
we can get controversial here. Don't worry about it. That's fine. That's perfectly fine.
It's absolutely going to, upset some of your your progressive viewers, and I don't care.
That's okay.
I'm reading this, and from just what I'm reading,
I'll flash really a link up right now. A link up to that to find that book. Here's a link above our heads right now. So
it's absolutely showing to me even more so that it really begins in your community. And the more progressive a community, the more they're going to do these crazy things like, let's start, heroin clinics where you can literally go in and do heroin.
Yeah.
Let's, and these actually are things that have started in some of the bigger communities.
Seattle
and this book talks about how those don't work. And not just Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, all across
L.A.,
country.
New York, Chicago. They all have them now. All the big cities
Absolutely.
have them now. Wet rooms where people can drink themselves to death. Yeah, it's just all it does is take the problem off the streets and hides it away from people. That's all it really does, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the more I'm reading the book, the more I'm like, I don't have such the bad idea that I thought I have. I mean, I listen to the people in my office, and I'm the most wing in there. I'm there to help people, and that's why I'm there, is to help people. But I've got the most right-wing ideals, and I'm realizing that these extremely left-wing ideals aren't necessarily the best ideal anyways.
Mm-hmm. So if we were to go to our mayor, because like I said, I'm city councils, and we're starting asking questions. Well, what are we doing about this? Because I'm out, where I'm at. I'm not going to expose the name where I'm at, just like I'm not going to expose the name of the city you're at. But where I'm at, I mean, there's a fair size homeless population. We're semi-rural. You're more rural than us, but we're semi-rural.
Mm-hmm.
I was just at his house, 4th of July, and we. And so there's a lot of homeless people that live in the woods around here. Many of them are veterans. And again, my work on the Deacons Board has showed me a lot about what was going on around our community and hidden away, that's out of sight, out of mind for most people. So
Right.
go to your city councils, go to your people that making the decisions, and say, we need to catch these people before they become homeless. We need a two-pronged attack. We need to help the people that are homeless, without a doubt. But remember that a lot of those people that are homeless, and this is something I actually just didn't understand. I actually have a friend who is homeless, and he doesn't want to be housed. He doesn't want to be in a house.
They choose to be there. So let's back up in the story a little bit and go back to how I got to where I am.
That was going to be one of my questions, without a doubt. How did you, my friend Sam, and let's face it, when you were a teenager, I did not put you were a potato head. I affectionately call it, you were a potato head. I call my son a potato head, so don't feel too bad about it. But how did you, after that, going into handyman and realizing it's breaking your body up, and then how did you end up being a social worker of all things?
So, about 2012, life pretty well fell apart for me. I ended up having about a month where I was living in a garage.
Mm-hmm.
And a former coworker had said, hey, if you can find an RV, come move out to my property and I'll give you a place to park for $100 a month. I said, well, let's do it.
Yeah.
It was all I could do at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I was a handyman. And I was just starting out. That was my first year as a handyman. It was a really tough year. I would take every single job that came along. It didn't matter if I was cutting your grass, stacking rocks, whatever you would pay me to do, I was going to be there. Mm-hmm. And the one thing it taught me that year is who my friends were and how many friends I actually had. Mm-hmm. I was floored and stunned and shocked at just how many people during that time stood up and said, here, I'll give you a couple hours of work. Here, I'll give you 3 hours of work. Hey, come wash my car for $25. Okay, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. It was one of the most powerful moments of my life to find out that I was poor and destitute, and I had so many people that stood up and said, let me help you.
Mm-hmm. And they did it with dignity too. They actually gave you work to do. They weren't just giving you money. Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear it in my voice.
I can hear you breaking. You're breaking up a little bit. I can hear it. Yeah, that's avatars don't cry, people, but real men do. So it's okay.
Anyways, I took every job that came along. I did everything that first year. It didn't matter what it was, because at that point I was just trying to figure out how to survive. The next year I realized that there were some jobs that I just hate. And I went those jobs down, like painting. I am not a painter. I'll tape the windows, I'll tape the doors, I'll tape everything. I don't paint.
You'll do all the prep work. Because that's funny, because I hate the prep work on painting.
Oh, I won't do the sanding. No, you do that.
No. I'm not even talking about the sanding. I'm talking about the taping everything off, masking it off, all of that.
Absolutely.
And because I want to go in and I want to blast it out and call it good. Okay, we're done.
Yeah. So, but there was most jobs I was still taking, and the next couple of years, they were rough, they were rocky. I got myself into a lot of debt. I added to the debt I currently had, because before that I'd been a caregiver, and the income at that point was less than living wage.
Yeah.
And so I just added and added and added to the debt. And I had this attitude of, what's another bill? Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
What's another $20? You know, and after being a handyman for a couple of years, I was on average from March through October making $100 a day. So I did what I did with the money. I just got it and I spent it. I'd buy food. I'd go buy tools. I don't know. It just fell through my hands as fast as I got it. You know, hundreds of dollars, dozens of days, $100 a day, easy, easy, just gone. Well, I also racked up a lot of debt doing that. About 5 years ago, I decided finally it's time for me to give back. I'm finally doing okay. I'm not doing great, but I'm doing okay. That I can give back a little. And like I said earlier, it begins at home. I don't believe in donating to the Red Cross. I don't believe in March of Dimes and these big faceless organizations that are supposed to be benefits. I don't believe in them. I believe if you want to help, you help in your community. You help next door. You help across the street. You help down at the town hall. So I looked for opportunities around home to assist with. And the one thing that I saw was a warming center. And what it is that when the temperature got below a certain point, we would open it up, and the homeless people out on the streets could come in and get warm. And of course, house people that didn't have very good heating could come in too, but generally it was the homeless people. We did have a couple of house people come in over the years. And anyway, so that's what got me what got me started in working with the social workers. You know, I went in, I volunteered for my first night. I talked to the guy who was running it. Maybe 4 of the hours I was there, talked to him almost the whole time. And at the end of it, he hands me an application and says, I'll see you Monday.
Nice.
Basically, I just talked myself into a job.
Yep. You did the interview while working with him in there.
Didn't even realize I was doing the interview. And you know, one of the things he really liked is that while we were talking, I'd say, hey, excuse me a minute, and I'd go do a walk around and check on all the clients and make sure they were okay. And then I'd come back and we'd talk some more. And he really was impressed with the fact that, you know, my job was to be there and to check on the clients, and that's what I did. So I got the job working first at the warming center, and then I moved to the shelter, and I worked with the shelter for a couple of years.
What kind of shelter was this?
It was a
men's, I assume.
What's that?
Was it primarily men? Was it families?
So there's, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So the shelter had 30 beds. 22, 23 of them for men, the rest for women. There were 2 rooms for the women. The men were in more of a dorm area. The women were, 5 in one room, 4 or 5 in the other, depending on how we needed to move things around and what we could do with the space we had.
Okay.
It was a 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. shelter, I think it was. And unlike most shelters where you come in and the next day you leave and take all your stuff, this shelter had more of a policy where you kept your bed as long as you kept coming back. If you missed a night, then you were potentially losing your bed. That first winter that I worked in that shelter, we had 35 people in there because it was cold enough that we needed to let other people in. And so we'd set up a couple extra cots. But generally, there were about 30 people. COVID hit. And that sent everything we knew about the shelter just all out of whack. Because we had to reduce the number of people we could keep in there from 30 32, I can't remember exactly how many, down to less than 16. Because we had to have the distancing.
That feels almost criminal. I'll be honest. You know what I'm saying? Because as an example, I remember hearing about and I think it was in England. No, it was in Canada. It was in Canada where it gets much colder than it does here in Washington State for us, and they did the same kind of thing where they were shutting down the shelters, and people were doing things like one guy was found dead in a porta potty, just trying to get out of the cold. You know,
so the only 2 deaths we had because of the cold were by people who refused to come in.
Okay, well, there's that.
We even were going to make accommodations for the one guy and his somewhat aggressive dog. We were going to make a way for him to come in, and he still refused to come in. So back to what we were talking about earlier. Again, there's some people who don't want the assistance, don't want to be housed.
Yeah.
So for a short time, we moved the shelter to the local fairgrounds. And that was a much bigger auditorium. We could have the social distancing we needed to have. And like I said, it threw everything out of whack. At that point, we became a 24-hour shelter for a long time, weeks, months, many months. At the same time where we had the shelter, there was also still several of the homeless in the community that had been, for various reasons, kicked out or refused to come in the first place. And so they decided that, okay, here's this open area of the fairgrounds. We're just going to squat. They just decided that they're going to take it over. I got tasked one day with we told them that they had to leave at a certain point. One day, on like the end of June or something like that, they had to move to a new area, go find new areas to be homeless at. And so after several well-meaning agency representatives from my agency as well as other agencies had literally gone into the forest, gone into the bush to chase these people out to get them all in one place because they wanted to offer them more services during COVID. Now these people are all stuck at the fairgrounds illegally because they have nowhere else to go. Not the people that we had housed there, but the people that we didn't take in. We moved to hotels for a few months and left those people there. Well, they were told they had to move off the fairgrounds. So they were pushed off the fairgrounds. I had to be part of the delegation that helped them move. And that was the day I nearly quit. The first time.
Yeah.
It was the most emotionally stressful thing. And I sided with, as much as I could, I sided with the people at the fairgrounds. They'd been kicked out of everywhere else and were told to go there. And now they're being told to leave here. And I just felt it was completely fair to them.
Yeah. There's absolutely and kind of checking things in. Okay. Keep going.
I was the bearer of the bad news, the messenger.
That's tough.
And they were shooting every verbal, vile statement at me that they could. True to the true testament, though. At the end of the day, I'm getting the last guy out, and I've known this guy for quite a while, and he's been in the shelter, and he wasn't actually kicked out of the shelter. He left voluntarily when we had to reduce numbers. Anyways, he'd been one of those that were just yelling vile cuts at me and just calling me a piece of trash. And at the end of the day, he says, "Do you think I can get a bed inside the shelter?"
Hallelujah, right?
And I just looked at him and I said, "Let's go talk to the guy running it."
Yep.
And I went and talked to the guy running it, and I said, "Hey, so and so wants a bed." And he says, "Yeah, let's bring him in. We'll give him a place." I mean, after hours and hours of just working with this guy and with him being intensely upset with me, things just flipped.
Yeah.
And that's how I am in this job, though, is that I understand that your yelling and your screaming and your anger is not at me.
Mhm.
Yes, you're directing it at me, but I know that it's not me, it's the situation.
Yeah, you're just the front man of the
and
scenario.
that's, I think, one of the reasons why I was able to stay in that position for so long.
Yeah.
But over the last couple of years, I've gotten burned out shitters, and the main reason is because the way things are now,
Mhm.
they're not pushed to move forward.
Mhm.
They're allowed to get stale where they are. Stagnate, that's the word.
Yeah.
They're allowed to stagnate where they are.
Mhm.
The same people that were in the shelter 5 years ago when I started working in the shelter
Mhm.
are still in the shelter now.
That's crazy.
And
they just they don't want to change.
It's because of COVID.
Yeah.
Part of it's because of COVID. Part of it's because they get too many services.
Mhm.
Here's where we get controversial again. They get too many services. We give them too much. We make it too easy for people to be homeless.
Mhm.
You know, come in, take a bed. Yeah, you just have to talk to your case manager once in a while. And, oh, you're talking to your case manager? Well, then we'll extend your stay. Even though you have a 90-day maximum, we can extend your stay because you're talking to your case manager once every 3 months.
Oh, geez, yeah. Yeah. So you're not really trying, yeah.
No. And it was just something that I was getting tired of watching, tired of seeing repeated over. There's no reason those people that were there for 5 years should still be there.
Right.
Either they should be told, hey, get out, or they should have been helped to find housing. And I did say there's a lack of housing. That's not untrue. That's a fact. But in 5 years, they really couldn't find housing is hard for me to believe.
Yeah.
And I know that some of them are older. So it's even harder to find because they're on that fixed income. But there are programs out there. There are subsidies. There are
in 5 years you could have been on Section 8 in 5 years time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, even the Section 8 waiting list is only 3 years long.
Is it 3 years now? It was 2 years. I know 10 years, 10 15 years
county.
ago. Yeah. I know
Depending
King
on
County
where
used to be 2 years, but I haven't really been in that world as much for some time now.
I'm from what I know, it's about 3 years in the bigger cities. So, anyways,
makes sense.
They could have been on Section 8 by now. They should have been. And it's real easy to transfer that from county to county. So the fact that they're still there in 5 years, it was enough for me to say, I'm done with shelters. I just can't watch this anymore.
And do you think that happens to a lot of people who work in those things? Did you see a fair amount of turnover because of that same kind of concept, or
No, actually, I saw a turnover because of lousy workers.
Yeah, people just didn't care enough.
Not because they were burned out; it's because they just chose not to. Not to do a great job. I will say that regardless if I believe in anything at the office, any of the politics, if I believe in the program I'm working for or not, if I am employed to do this job, I am going to do my best at it. We've had a couple of veterans that have come in with the desire to be transgen or to cross-dress or they and thems. Which I personally don't agree with calling somebody a they or them. They're either a he or a she, and that's just the way I see the world.
Right.
But while I'm on the clock, while I am taking care of them and providing them services, they are absolutely going to be referred to in which way they prefer to be referred to.
Yeah.
Because I'm being paid to represent, at this time, this company and this program. And it doesn't matter what my personal feelings are.
Yeah. And that's the way it should. That's what you should feel about it while you're on the clock, kind of concept. It's
exactly, it's a very rare feeling to find in a social services program because most people are like, "Oh, let's support this and let's support that," and I'm like, "I'm doing this because it's my job."
Yeah,
if I was blatantly racist, as long as I didn't use it on the job, wouldn't matter.
Yeah, generally speaking,
I'm not racist. I don't.
Yeah. No, I've never known you to be so. So what about some success stories? Yeah, it's the Dutch. It's the Dutch.
I have a success stories.
Yes, give me some.
Actually,
give me a success
one of my
story.
best success stories is one guy that was in the shelter.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I was kind of working both shelters and the veterans program. So I was working sometimes at the shelter, sometimes I was working with veterans, and I was in the office more and not as much with the homeless. And there's this one guy that every time I go into the shelter, he's helping. He would be bringing in groceries or food. He would be standing there with a broom in his hand, sweeping. He, at some points we put him behind the desk because we needed someone to watch the desk for 10 minutes and we trusted him. This guy actually showed that he wanted to do more than just be a homeless person, which is rare. It's extremely rare in the community because the people that want out get out. So, after watching him for about a month and a half, I offered him a job. I said, look, we need somebody else to work the shelter so I can get out of the shelter. But we need someone to work in the shelter. You already know it. The only issue is we need to find you housing. And so for a little bit, he was actually living out at the fairgrounds and working at the shelter with the squatters. And I said, you know what, this just can't be what we're doing. So I ended up, I had an RV or a trailer at my house, an unused trailer that I just stored tools in for lack of anywhere else to put them. And I said, I've got a trailer for you. And talked to my landlord, and she's charging him rent, and he's living in a trailer out here in my house. And
so are they the ones that pulled up while we were there? I'm just curious.
No, you didn't meet him.
Okay. So I was just curious because I know somebody pulled up and went into one of the trailers there on the property while we were there.
What vehicle?
It was a pickup, as I recall.
Nope.
Okay. So
no, that was the landlord's kid, grandkid.
Okay. Oh, okay. So just so you know,
but so this guy
Sam actually lives in a barn. Now, mind you, I saw it for the first time, 4th of July. He's converted it very nicely. It's a nice apartment now, and it's he's got some really nice amenities: running water, electricity, walls, a bed, heat, everything's there. I probably would be a little hesitant to let a code enforcement person out there, but I'm sure he did everything to code. It's just there was probably no permits. Yeah, so
I will go over that. Terry, sorry, we did get my coworker housed.
Yeah.
Got him employed, got him housed, and he's been successful. He's still working full time. He's actually at a management level with the shelters already.
Wow. Yeah. This is a big success story for him.
Yeah. He's an absolute success story. Back to my living situation. So after I'd lived in the garage for the month and I moved out to my landlord's place in an RV, this RV I've nicknamed Mad Eye Moody. I will send you a picture of that to put up here so you can see just how terrible this beast
please
was.
do. I'll flash that up.
This thing was a terrible beastie. It was missing a front window on the passenger side. It had no guts inside whatsoever, so it was literally just the hull of an RV. Metal walls, no insulation, nothing. Driving it out to my place, I had to drive it 12 miles. I hooked up a gas can to an electric fuel pump on a switch because it would overfill the carburetor otherwise.
Sure, yeah.
As I'm driving down the road.
There was no regulation here.
I had to keep one hand on the switch to shut it off every few seconds so that the carburetor wouldn't die out because it would flood. And drive this thing 12 miles down the road. I ended up to stop at a gas station, managed to peel out of the gas station. So it's like, hey, this thing's got some power. And I lived in that for about 3 or 4 years. And one day I said to my landlord, I said, I need to build a shed. Where can I build it? And she's like, why do you need a shed? I said, I am tired of living in this furnace in the summertime, and it's an ice box in the wintertime. And that's what it was. And so she said, well, the barn has already been started 10 years ago, but hasn't been done anything with,
Mm-hmm.
finish remodeling the barn.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, seriously? And she's like, yeah. And so that night, I went to it with a will. The first thing I did was figure out what was there, and at that first moment, all I could get to was the bedroom area. And so what I had to do was get everything out of the bedroom area, and then repair a piece of sheetrock on the ceiling, and then paint it and clean it, and put a bed in there, and I at least had that, and that was for a little while. Then when I invited my sister to come out, and she says, "Now you have running water in the toilet."
Yeah,
she didn't even need it in the sink. She wanted it in the toilet.
Yep, she had her standards.
She apparently doesn't understand going to the bathroom in the bush. Whatever.
Girls don't like that much.
Spoiled.
Yep.
Anyways, so that was her condition. So I made sure that I cleared out the area where the bathroom was and put a toilet in there. And yeah, you had to turn a nozzle and turn on the hose to fill the toilet, but at least it worked.
Yeah. You had a flushable toilet.
I had a flushable toilet.
Each one of these things is actually a big step up for you at this time. How long ago was this that you moved into the barn?
7 years ago.
7 years ago, because I mean, I saw it for the first time just the other night, and so I've kind of seen, and I saw the pictures. You know, we're gonna have to send me some of the pictures of the finished product too, because people have to understand, because one of the things your sister, said his sister is my daughter-in-law, and we call it's okay. They're not married yet, but let's just call her my daughter-in-law. I mean,
she's my half sister.
Yeah.
So she's to me, he's my stepsister's stepfather-in-law to be.
Yes, nice and confusing for everybody. She's my daughter-in-law. So
mutually, we're nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So she stated straight up. She was you have to have running water. And then she stepped you up. Didn't she say something about, because it was a dirt floor in the majority of that place at the time?
No, I don't think she had.
Did she push it?
After I got the shower of the toilet working, I then cleared out the middle area, which is about a 12 by 14, whatever it is.
Something like that, yeah.
And I cleared it out, and I put a pool table there for a while. So I had a little couch and a chair and a pool table. But I found that the pool table wasn't able to bring friends over because I live 10 miles from town. And nobody wants to drive 10 miles when they don't have to.
Right.
So I ended up usually going to friends' houses. Well, I put a tarp up over the ceiling area to keep the birds from pooping on my pool table.
Yeah.
I cleared out the kitchen area, and I had just enough space to walk through in there, and some cheap cabinets a friend of mine had gotten for me. And they worked, but they were particle board, and they weren't great. And so I had an old rickety stove, and I had the particle board cabinets, and it was something. I could kind of cook.
Yeah.
One day I was tired of living in this half finished place. At the time, I should mention the barn door. At the time, it had one of those sliding barn doors, 12-foot long sliding barn door. So it would cover that entire living room. In the summertime, I just left it wide open because it was so warm. But in the wintertime, I would close it, and it kind of healed, but not really. And I eventually finished that wall. But I talked to a friend of mine, and I said, being a handyman, I either have the money or I have the supplies. But I don't have both when I have the time. And if I could have all of the supplies there to start building, I could actually finish my place. And she thought about it for a bit, and she says, let's go to Lowe's. So we went out to Lowe's, which is 50-mile drive, give or take,
Mm.
and spent about $4,000 or $5,000.
Wow.
Just went nuts.
Yeah.
Bought wood, bought sheetrock, bought tools that would be needed for this stuff. Bought nails and screws and all sorts of stuff that we needed. And one of my favorite things she bought at that time was the washer and dryer. You
have a nice setup.
Up until then, for the last several years, I had been going to the laundromat. And so I would have a month's worth of clothes, because when you are working all the time as a handyman and you have to go to the laundromat and it takes 3 to 5 hours to process all your clothes at the laundromat, you only go once. Because otherwise you're going to spend 2 hours to do a load sitting at the laundromat versus, and I don't trust the people around here. Your clothes will go missing. So, you'd either spend 2 hours 3-4 times a month, or you'd spend 5-6 hours once a month. Still costs the same. It's just easier to do in one day. So, but it's still frustrating because you can never get laundry done because you're always just behind of it. So that washer and dryer, I put to work right away. I started washing clothes, and I mean, even now I will still run it at least once a week. Even if I don't need to, I will find loads because it is so nice to have that. It was a blessing.
And this is a single guy. So, it does take you a week to build up a load of laundry as a single guy.
Yeah. I will tell you that living in construction is challenging at best. Whenever you want to work on an area, you have to move everything to another area. And so 20 minutes of the start of your project, you're always moving stuff. It doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter if you prep for it. Guaranteed that stuff that you thought you put out of the way is going to be in the way. Even if you put it in the finished bedroom, you need to get into it to get stuff out of it to go back to work. So that was a challenge. Another challenge I had was how to arrange the place. The bedroom is on a cement slab, and the kitchen and bathroom were on a cement slab. In between was a dirt floor. The cement slab where the kitchen and bathroom were, there's already the wet wall built. So you already had where the wet connections were. You already had that whole wall. And unless you were really wanting to, you're not going to drill and chip into the concrete floor to move the toilet or move the tub. It's where it is.
This is where you were. Half the house plan was set before you got there.
Right.
So interesting is because I'm listening to this and I'm thinking to myself, with the other stuff that you've done, your work as a social worker, your work at the warm shelter and everything, you kind of formed into that as somebody who was pretty much on the verge of homeless a lot of your life, a lot of your adult life.
Actually, several years, anyways, a third of it.
Yeah, a good portion of your adult life, you were, you were living. I mean, let's face it, when you were living in that RV, you were essentially homeless.
I was homeless, and I lived in squalor.
You did, and
I was kind of proud of it at the time, but
you lived in a way.
Want to go?
Yeah, there was not a sustainable concept. I mean, it was, it's like my one of my homeless friends. He's been in a hotel for a few months now. And I'm not, pay weekly kind of hotel, so, and he's proud of that right now. But I mean, okay, you're paying your bill. All right. I'm not going to argue with him too much, because I'm sure that pretty soon he's going to up from Spokane and he's going to move to Utah here soon. And he's going to be, looking for a sleeping bag and a tent. So,
right. I'll derail a minute on my house building project. There was one thing I really learned from this whole process, going from having a place I was renting to homeless to squalor to back to having a home again.
Mm-hmm.
When you first get out of homelessness, even if it's into a place of squalor, where you have a place of your own autonomy and a place you can call home, you don't trust it. It takes a long time to really trust and feel safe in that environment before you're going to start thriving. I've heard with a relationship, a week for every month, a month for every year to get over a relationship. It's similar with homelessness. If you were homeless for 5 years, it's going to take you 5 or 6 months before you even feel like you can let your hair down, as it were, where you can feel safe in that environment. And it took me that long before I even felt like that.
Yeah.
I mean, even as I was building, I was still insecure in my position at the time and did not feel like the bottom wasn't going to fall out from underneath me tomorrow. I still have days where I have that panic, but it's lessened. I feel like I've set myself up in a better way this time around. And I think I can recover if bad things happen next month.
Right.
I don't want them to, but I think I could recover. A lot faster, if nothing else.
Right.
But getting to that point, it takes a lot of years of stability to feel that safe.
Do you think for the average homeless person who does transition into housing, do you think that's a big stumbling block for them? Do you think they find themselves in that situation where I don't trust that this is going to be lasting very long, and so therefore they just really quick they just kind of chuck it and go back on the street?
That not because, or they will self-sabotage because they don't feel like they're going to make it. And that's something that I've not found a way to combat except for I have had a lot of people that have been there for me over the years. And that is one thing that I've had is support. Emotional and financial and just overall support. Yeah. And some of these people who've cut themselves off from their family, oftentimes with good reason, they don't have it. And I wonder how they're going to manage.
Right. Yeah, because they don't know what it's like to have support and have help.
Some of them
and they don't trust it, and they don't trust it when it comes in.
Exactly.
And so they just kind of maintain, and I don't need you. I can get by on my own. I've been doing it. Why do I need you? You're just going to let me down again. Absolutely. Just like the last person did. So, yeah. So this has been a really good talk. I want to wrap it up mostly for time consideration here because we are going to talk again. So I want you to keep that in mind before because you have a lot more to tell.
Okay, so we left it off at the dirt floor. So we'll come
the dirt floors. Yeah, we'll talk about your place in the dirt floors. Send me some pictures on that. I want to put those up. But
I'll see what I can find.
Yeah, see what you can find. So thank you for joining us on this one. This has been a good journey. This is an old friend. Every time I have these conversations with an old friend, I learn more about them and what their makeup is and how they ended up where they're at. And Sam's got an awesome story right there. If you want to help people who are, keep them from becoming homeless or help the homeless, just like he says, he's been in the thick of it. Start at your city council. Start at your county seats, and work on those people. Bring people, vote people in who are willing to catch them before they become homeless, as well as helping the homeless, and actually give them real help, not just give them the ability to continue to live as a homeless person. Because that's where a lot of our system is flawed, is we help them live as a homeless person. And that's not doing them any favors. That's not helping them in any way. Just like Sam says, he's lived it, he's been there, and he's watched it happen. And it's a flaw in our system. And I 100% agree. My work as a deacon in my church, I saw very similar things. And so, without a doubt, and if you're a veteran in need of help, Sam, who would they go to if they're a veteran in need of help? what program would you suggest that they reach out to?
Honestly, the program I work with is Support Services for Veterans and Families, SSVF. But first off, go look for a Vet Connect. Go look for Veterans Resource Center. Go to your social service office and really just say, I need help. And they're going to ask you what, and just tell them. Be honest. Say, look, I'm in this situation and I'm looking at this future and I need help changing this from that. If you say, hey, my past is this and I've got a disability, go talk to a service officer, because a lot of times your disability can get increased. If you're only getting 5% or 10%, you can get that increased to 30% or 40%. So, number one, ask. You can't win the lottery if you don't play, and you can't get help if you don't ask.
Amen. You betcha. Sam, it's been a lot of fun. This has been a great talk, and we're gonna do it again. I want to put you in kind of my regular rotation of people coming out and talking.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we'll talk about these things. Sometimes we'll talk about a movie we watched. Who knows, right? So, as a matter of fact, here in about, what time is it right now? I can't see a clock. Any idea? Yeah, neither do I. We have just a little bit. We have we have a standing.
It's
VR.
only 5. We got another hour.
We got another hour for that. Good. Well, that's good, because I have a couple of things to do first. So we have a standing virtual reality disc golf game that we play every Wednesday, and so that's coming up here this evening. I have a couple of friends from Maryland that we play with on a regular basis, and then Sam and I being in Washington State, it works out really good because you can't do that without virtual reality. So, but I will be interviewing those two as well at some point in time when we get that set up. And thanks a lot, Sam. I really appreciate you opening up and being here. I know that there's going to be somebody out there that's going to hear this and be like, I know I can help this person now. Maybe they have a cousin, a brother, a sister, an old buddy, an old friend that's just, they're lost, and now they've heard something. It's like, I can help this person get help, and now I have a direction to go. And Sam, that's one of the important things of doing these kind of things. So God bless. Be sure to like and subscribe, because that's how a channel grows. That's how the algorithm works, and that's how it gets out there to more people, and so that could hear this message. So God bless. Have a great day. Thank you so much.